Hello, school psychologist friends. It's Rebecca from Thriving School Psychologist and Notes from the School Psychologist blog. And I am super excited to have my guest today, Angela Watson. She is one of my early friends in the blogosphere. We met on Blogspot, which is like the oldest blog on the planet, when we both started doing similar things in different lanes. So I work with school psychologists to help them, streamline their workflow and, move from being overworked and underutilized into thriving in their profession and really engaging in self-care. And Angela does that very similarly for teachers. So I'm really excited to have you, Angela. Welcome.
Thank you. It's so great chatting with you.
Yes. So Angela has just written a book. So she has evolved from Blogspot to other things. Those early platforms, for those of you who are too young to know, it's like the first platform for blogs. And she's written several books. And the latest one I wanted to share with the school psychologist community for two reasons. One is because it's just amazing and it really dovetails on the things we're learning in the online course that I do, the Thriving School Psychologist Collective. But also it's a great resource for teachers, and I think there's a lot of crossover. So the name is Fewer Things Better. So can you kind of chat a little bit about what Fewer Things Better is about, and then share maybe a couple of key points from the book that you think are topical?
Sure. I mean, I think that streamlining and simplification is a big trend in the world right now, but it hasn't really trickled down to education. We're still just trying to do as many things as possible. And I think one of the root issues is that people get really nervous when we talk about doing less. It starts to sound like lazy teaching. Are we enabling people in schools to not do the best possible job for kids? So I think there's a natural skepticism and a healthy skepticism about it. And that's why I subtitled the book, The Courage to Focus on What Matters Most, because if you're just doing a halfway job, with your tasks, well, that's kind of easy. You don't really need a book. You don't really need anyone to tell you how to, be late with all your deadlines and not turn in your paperwork and, not do a great job for kids. But it really does take courage to step back and really get clarity on what matters most. What is really moving the needle in my school? What are the things that I'm doing that make a huge impact for kids, that are really, accomplishing big, important goals? And what are the things that really aren't? And streamlining from there. And it takes a lot of courage because it's not the norm in most schools. Most schools, the norm is you do as much as possible. You're supposed to sacrifice everything for the kids. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit. It's all about, being a team player and picking up the slack and doing all these unpaid tasks that are not part of your job description. And it's burning out school psychologists. I know that from talking to you. We had a lengthy discussion about that right before this, that, just mirrors so much of what's happening with teachers. This is not a sustainable way to have people working in schools. We're losing great people. So I think we have to stop waiting for someone on high to reinvent the profession. And we have to decide we're going to create boundaries and we're going to figure out how do we do a great job without letting it take over our entire lives.
I think you've touched on two things that really map onto what we're doing in our Thriving School Psych community. One is there's this myth of being like the bionic school psychologist or the bionic teacher, like bigger, better, faster, stronger, more efficient, and efficiency will take you part of the way. But there is this culture around do more and do it all and sacrifice yourself to do so. And then it's like, oh, well, also self-care, do that too. And I think that the time is right for us to take charge of our careers from within, because if someone was going to save us, by now it would have happened. If someone was going to come in and be like, school psychologists, let's get you reasonable caseloads. Teachers, let's remove that from your platter. School psychologists, let's not work on the weekends. It was going to happen by now, right? So we have to work within systems that are very challenging. So can you tell me a little bit about, maybe we'll just, for our audience, kind of simplify. It's very hard to simplify, but if anyone can do it, Angela Watson can, which is maybe three mindset shifts that are really critical to doing fewer things better and having the courage to have boundaries and to not burn out by trying to be the bionic teacher or school psychologist.
I love that you're talking about systems, because I think so much of this is happening on a systemic level. And then the self-care piece, the sustainability piece is put on the individual level, like go do that on your own. And really we need to figure out ways to build it into the day. And I think we'll talk about a couple different things here. Let's start with one about, let's see, where should we begin? Because there's a lot of different places that we can begin. Let's talk with examining stories about what has to be done. I hear a lot of people who work in school say, I don't have a choice. This is what I'm told to do. I have to do it this way. This is the way it's always been done. The person who was in this job before me said they do it like this. And I think when we use that as a line to sort of hide behind, it's disempowering. If you feel like you have to do it this way, it doesn't give you any options to try to figure out a better way. And I think one of the things that I try to help people working in schools, particularly teachers, but I think this is also applicable to school psychs, is, to really question who said it has to be done that way. And a lot of times when you ask that question, there actually wasn't anybody on high who did it. It may just be the way that it's normally been done. It could just be the easiest way that someone figured out and everyone else went along with it. So if you can really figure out, where did this mandate origin from? Where did this approach to the workflow come from? And what was the goal? Why is it set up this way? What are they trying to accomplish here? If my administrator says I need to do this way, and it's outrageous, it takes up way too much time, and it doesn't serve anyone, doesn't do anything good for anyone, well, what were they trying to accomplish? They were trying to avoid some sort of consequence. Maybe it's a documentation thing, an accountability thing. Figure out what it is that they're trying to accomplish with that goal, and then find a more efficient, effective way. And you can frame that as action research, right? So it doesn't have to be, I'm subverting the system or I'm not doing what I'm told, because that's a whole nother issue. I mean, we could talk for a whole hour on that whole mentality in schools and how we as women, especially, feel conditioned to be people pleasers and, follow the rules, and we want to be nice. We want to be liked. We want to, be part of the group. But the truth is that you really have to think about what's the most effective way to do this. And you can be an action researcher. You can say, okay, I know the goal is we need to have some sort of written out method or some sort of documentation of what we're doing here for kids. The way we're doing it now is creating massive amounts of paperwork that everyone hates. Let me propose that we try this other way for a couple weeks. We'll compare the results. If it didn't work, then we'll come back and we'll reevaluate. But I think you can really approach it from a very professional way. Take charge of it. Use your professional judgment and say, I'm going to question the status quo, and I'm going to figure out something that is more efficient and effective and still meet those same goals.
I think what a lot of school psychologists are probably thinking, as I know I am as you're talking, is I don't have a choice. I don't have a choice. I have to finish this report. There's deadlines, right? I have to sit in these IEP meetings for 3 hours. Or I have to log this in 5 different places in 5 different ways, because that's just our CYA situation that our district enjoys. So I like the fact that, I kid you not, it's like special education is the department of redundancy department, because I seriously must log where I assessed a kid and what days, like in 5 different locations. And one of them, I kid you not, this was not that long ago. This was only about 7 years ago. There was a card catalog, like back in the 70s, where they had to you pulled out a card, you wrote it, I tested the kid, and you put it back, and it's like, but it's in the computer. But it was like you say, the goal was, the double check. We really did test this kid. So I really like the practical strategy of let's experiment with a way that also makes sure we track every kid, but doesn't make me have to drive to a district office to use a card catalog. Okay, so I wish because no one's using the card catalog because they think that's the best system. There's no one who thought this is best. It was just the easiest, and it was a relic from what they were already doing. If you have a better way, if you're willing to experiment with something better, as long as you've got that backup documentation, whoever's requiring that of you might be okay with it. And isn't it worth trying? Your sanity is in the balance here. Your ability to keep doing this job that you love is hanging in the balance. So I think it's worth taking that risk a lot of times to see if there's something better you can do. I think also it's worth monetizing that time for districts. Let's take a school psych's average salary. And if I'm driving and card cataloging once a week, that's a couple hours of work. What does that cost the district to do that? Whereas I could do it at my site in 2 minutes online, right? So that's an extreme example of archaic systems, but I think there's a lot of other things that school psychs can be interested about. What can we do action research around? And action research isn't like coming in guns blazing, being like, we gotta change the system. It's, I see the goal, let's see if there's an alternative way. And often school psychologists and teachers are the ones on the ground. They have the idea about what a better system could be. So in some cases,
right.
you have a choice. When I first entered a school district, I kept asking why. I was like, wait, why? Why are we doing it this way? Why? And like a school psychologist who was in the field for like 30 years is like, just free yourself from why and do it. I'm like, I don't want to do that. Like, I want, I was like, no, I don't think this is right for kids or right for us as professionals to do things in a certain way just because it's always been done that way. But I think that is like in the water in school systems, and change can be glacially slow. But everyone likes research. So I like framing it up as action research.
Yeah. And what a coping mechanism, right? To just turn off the why, to stop asking questions and just do it, because there's so many frustrating things. So it's like, I'm just going to stop asking why. We can't give up though. We got to keep asking why.
We got to keep asking why. All right, let's move to point number 2, another mindset that you think holds teachers and educators and school psychologists back from doing fewer things better, or from overworking and doing unpaid hours and things like that.
So I know you're really big on mindset shifts, and that's where this comes in. I think a lot of times we see ourselves as a savior for kids. We feel the weight of the world on our shoulders. If we don't do all of these things, this kid is going to fall through the cracks. This kid is going to fail. This kid is never going to read. This kid is never going to, have the medication they need to get, whatever it is. And we feel personally responsible for things that we cannot control and that really are not our sole responsibility. When we talk about doing whatever it takes for kids, the operative word there is not whatever it takes, which is, I think, what we focus on, right? Like, I've got to just, work 90-hour weeks to try to do whatever it takes. The operative word is we. We have to do whatever it takes. It's not all on you as one person. You cannot mentally take that load on. And only you are responsible for that. Because, people can put pressure on you, but it's your choice whether to internalize that. Those are their expectations for you. All these people making demands on you and deciding these things need to be done as fast as possible, faster than you can get them done because you got too many kids. You have to decide, okay, I can only do what I can do. I am not responsible for saving the kids. I am here as a supporter. I am not a savior. I'm going to do the best that I can take, the best that I can do. And it is my responsibility to take care of myself, because if I am not eating healthy, if I'm not exercising, if I'm not sleeping, if I'm not taking time off from work to be a fully actualized human being with my own hobbies and a personal life and hopes and dreams apart from this job, then I'm not going to be able to do this for very long, and they're going to lose me altogether. And I want to stay and make an impact. So I think ultimately we have to replace this idea of do whatever it takes for the kids to find a sustainable way to do this job and have a personal life. We can't sacrifice all of our time and energy for the job, because your job is just one way that you're making an impact on the world. It's one thing that you do that is important. There's so many other things. And, as you said, there's no one is going to come in from on high and mandate that and say, okay, that's it. Workday ends at 3:00, go home and enjoy. It's not going to ever happen. We have to set those boundaries for ourselves.
Yeah. I mean, I joke about like all the Instagram hashtags and things sometimes because they can feel cheesy and whatever, but for real, like, hashtag cannot pour from an empty cup. I mean, really. I think that we do, as people who care a lot about kids, take personal responsibility, and we don't see that we are one part of a giant system around that child. We can have a big impact, but we're not the only impact. And so, you can feel, like you're the only one who's going to be, helping the student. But again, if you aren't taking care of yourself, then you're not going to be able to, overflow from that cup to help students. And I think that one of the things that I've learned from the science of happiness research is about the positive resonance and ripple effect. So when you are in a calm, relaxed, overflowing space, then that ripples out to your work. If you are coming from a space that is not overflowing but depleting, there's only a matter of time before you deplete yourself. And I think this is hard for new school psychologists and probably new teachers too, because when you come into the profession, you're like raring to go. You're like, I can change the world, and you can do a lot, and you can absolutely make an effect. But at the same time, then when I was sitting in those staff meetings and I had all this like positive energy and everyone was like, just lean into the dysfunction and you'll be fine. I'm like, what's wrong with those people? I'll never be those people. 10 years later, I was that person. And I was like, oh God, it got me. It got me. So, I mean, the time to learn to swim is not when you're drowning. So if you're watching this and you're a new school psychologist, a new teacher, putting habits in up front that you don't have to undo later will pay off in dividends. And if you've been at it a while and you're not sure, like, wait, how do I help the students? How do I help myself? How do I balance that? I think another kind of mindset shift that was really critical for me is kids are never done, so you'll never be done. Because I kept thinking, I'm going to work until I'm done. And then guess what? You're never done. You're never done. So if you don't impose that boundary on yourself, society's not going to put it on you because they're like anything for the kids. It has to come from within. It's that, and also I think another one that was so critical for me is from Natalie of happier.com. She was like, a rested mind is more productive. I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, because you want to push through, and I'm almost done. But what you don't realize is that it actually zaps your productivity. So it's not only just feels good to be rested and calm and happy, but it also enhances your productivity the next day because you're rested, calm, and happy. And there's a whole lot of neurobiology around this phenomenon. So it's not just a hashtag on Instagram, but I love my hashtags. Self-care Sunday. But if you're sitting there taking a bubble bath on Self-care Sunday, I mean, like, I can't go to work tomorrow because it's just too much. The weight of the world is on my shoulders. That no bubble bath is luxurious enough to get out of that.
That's right. And I love what you said about, noticing that even in the beginning, even when you're idealistic, because I think all of us are idealistic at the beginning of the school year too. So we've got that other thing coming up in August. You've got all these big hopes and dreams of things that you're going to accomplish. And we have to remember, we teach people how to treat us, and we can set expectations. So if you set this habit where you're going to respond to emails within 30 minutes, or you're going to respond to emails at 11 o'clock at night or on Sunday mornings, and you do it in August because you're energetic, or you do it in the beginning of your career at the school because, you're new to the job and you just want to do a great job, people are going to expect that. And if you stop answering emails on Sundays, that's going to create a totally different type of dynamic than if you say right up front, I answer emails. These are my office hours. I answer emails from this time to this time. Feel free to reach me anytime it is convenient for you. I'll get back to you on Monday morning. So, really sort of noticing those boundaries for yourself early and pacing yourself is so hard to do.
Really hard to do because, as you say in your book, like, busy is not supposed to be a badge of honor, but it absolutely is. Like, oh, I have so many assessments and I have so many reports to write and I'm so busy. And not only just at work, but in life, people are like, how are you? I'm busy. Like, that has been seen as a badge of honor, but like, I'm living my life in ease. People will be like, what? But we don't strive for that. If we can live our lives in ease, I think that should be the badge of honor, is doing fewer things better. And yeah, there's going to be challenging moments, but if you are taking care of yourself, you're going to be better able to handle the storm when things get rough, right? If you kind of have a solid foundation to start with. Is there any other sort of a parting wisdom that you think that something that's in the book, or something that you've learned from the teachers that you've worked with that really helps people kind of move from feeling like they have to be busy all the time and do more and more and more to having healthy boundaries and doing fewer things better?
I think not everyone who works in the school is a perfectionist, and maybe school psychs are different from teachers. I don't know. You can tell me, but I think a lot of teachers struggle with perfectionism. Do you see that too?
I do.
Okay. It's that wanting to just always be the best, right? Because your job is important. I think for the teachers who struggle with that, and the school psychologists, and really any person who struggles with that, one thing that's really helpful to think about is relaxing your standards to a level where only you would notice. So you're not just dropping the ball necessarily altogether. You're not refusing necessarily to do something, although there's nothing wrong with that either. But there may be times when you're doing a task far beyond the extent that is needed or required. And I think if you can notice the things that you're doing that other people aren't paying attention to, that other people don't seem to care about, maybe there's this baseline expectation, but then you're color coding everything and, sending out all these additional announcements about it. Like there may be ways that you're overcomplicating the job. And if you stop doing that for a while, you'll see if it's necessary, because other people will comment. They'll say, hey, are you still, helping out with this? Or are you still doing this initiative? Or, I noticed this didn't happen. Well, that's a key that it matters to someone else. But I think you'll find that a lot of the stuff that you're doing, everyone else is so swamped with their own stuff that they're really not paying attention to it. So, maybe there's something you're doing, and this could even be in the home, where you feel like you put all this effort into something, and then 30 minutes later, all your hard work is undone because no one else really cared about it. That could be a time to relax your standards to a level where no one else will notice. If you are the only one who notices if something is done, then you can relax your standards. And it's worth experimenting with, because that's how you really determine what's essential and what's just something sort of nice to do if you have extra time.
Yes, I think that's a definite take home from your book. And then I've also watched some of your webinars and listened to your podcast. And I think that's one of my favorite mantras is relax to a standard only I notice. And so it's not just, doing shoddy work, but for me, it was report writing. So my reports, and I talk about this in my 4 pillars of a thriving school psychologist webinar, which I run, actually is coming up again in August, which is, you can do things the Vera Wang way, which is like beautiful and beaded and, elegant and expensive and gorgeous reports, right? Like just like 40 pages of like magic on a page. Or you can do the Simply Vera, which is with, the line on coals. Like it's still Vera Wang-ish. It's still well made, but it's just not as much resource went into it. And if you can find what you can shift that is only you notice. So I used to like give the rating scales to every single teacher. And then, it was really complicated to analyze them all. And now I give them just like the homeroom teacher and nobody noticed. And I use like just, qualitative from the others. So I used to over-test and overdo it and overwrite. And there's moments where, yes, for a variety of reasons, you need to do a Vera Wang report. Like it has to be like all the I's dotted and T's crossed. And there's other ones where like maybe it's the 4th time the kid's been assessed for special education. And you really want to just answer the question, how far have they come and what do they need? And you don't need to dive as deep as you normally would dive. So that's the school psych example of relaxing standards only to a level you notice. There's probably ways that people watching the school psychs can think about reports that, we don't need to do the Vera Wang report every single time because that takes a lot of resources. It's beautiful. I love it. But at the same time, there's other ways that you can do your job well, write a legally defensible, excellent report that serves the children and everyone answers the questions that need to be answered, but doesn't go as deep. And I think that's really hard for school psychologists because they want to put their best foot forward, and perfectionism, I think, we're kind of like varsity level report writers and we want to do our best job all the time. And there's conditions where you don't have to. And I think, again, what you said about action research is so critical. It's personal action research. What if I, for a week, don't write a report on Friday night and start small and work our way out? Does anything bad happen on Monday, right? Does anyone notice that I didn't work on the weekend? Am I missing my deadlines? These kinds of things can be built into, and this is something that we do all day long in the Thriving School Psychologist online course, because there's a delicate balance of what are your obligations, and how can you, make sure that you're doing the fewer things better, but also, I think being in tune with this, I think, groundswell, if I will, in education, where it's like, no, you don't have to work yourself to the bone all the time, and
Yes.
burn out. Because I think that's in the culture. It's baked into the culture of schools because, it's for the children.
That's right. And if you try to give 110% to everything, that's when you burn out. We want to give our best to everything, but it's just not a reality. There's way too many kids that you're trying to help, and you can't give that level. And it's so much conditioning that we have to learn because we're told since we're little, if you're not going to give 100%, don't do it. If it's not going to be your best, then why bother? You got to give 100% to everything. That's not real life. Let me tell you, there's some things happening in my house that I am not giving 100% to. I got crumbs on the table. Oh, well, if I give 100% to that, then I'm not able to give 100% to the things that are more important to me. Like I want to go for a walk later. I think that's a lot better for my mental state and my physical health than, mopping the floors. So you have to really think about these trade-offs. Every yes is a no to something else. So, if you're putting all those hours into writing this beautiful Vera Wang report, what are you then saying no to? What are the aspects of your job that are getting shortchanged that shouldn't be? Or what are the aspects of your personal life now that are being neglected because you needed a Vera Wang report?
That is so smart. That just turned into like a beautiful quote that it needs to be all over the internet, like, which is like with every yes, you're saying no to something else. So if you're saying yes to that beautiful Vera Wang report, you're saying no to doing counseling with a kid or something else that really is a passion project of yours, right? So that's really great. Oh my God, I could talk all day long. This could be a 42-hour coffee chat. It's meant to be enjoyed over a cup of coffee. So I hope you all had a large coffee.
Right.
A lot of coffee.
The coffee's cold by now if there's any left.
You got it. So let me share out where the book is, and I want you to tell me a little bit more about where educators, teachers, school psychologists can go to learn more. School psychologists, if you're watching this, you might let your teachers know, because teachers struggle with many of the same things we do. And there is support for them, just like I have support for my school psychologists in my online course. Angela also has some resources. So I'd love for you to share out more about where you can get the book, and then maybe some free resources for teachers.
Yeah, I would so appreciate if you all would tell teachers in your school about my resources, because my guess is you're hearing a lot of things from Becky that you're like, oh my gosh, I wish other people in my school knew that they need to have the same mentality. And you and I are so simpatico. Like we really are preaching the same message, just in different ways. So yeah, if you want to pass anything along, the best place to find me probably is just my website. It's the cornerstoneforteachers.com. And from there, you can find links to everything. One thing that I have that you may enjoy even as a school psych is my podcast. It's called Truth for Teachers. We don't talk a whole lot about classroom practice, though. It's just more about the mindset of what you need to succeed while working in a school system, because it's super draining. So I think there's a lot of encouragement and support and things like that. So you can check out Truth for Teachers. My books are there. I also have something called the 40-Hour Teacher Workweek Club, which is a program that helps teachers really simplify and focus on what matters. So if you go to my site, you can find that, and plus links to all my social media channels. I'd love to connect with you and find out what's resonating with you and what's working for you.
All right. Give a little shout out to the gram. What's your Instagram for everyone to follow?
It is Angela.Watson.
Okay. We will post below all the links that you need to find Angela and her fabulous work. So I'm so glad we became Blogspot friends.
I know.
And it's been really fun to see all the wonderful things you've created for teachers. And you've been a real inspiration for the work that I've been doing with school psychologists. And I think that school psychologists and teachers are meant to be besties, right? I mean, we love the students and we are great collaborators. So here we are, visual proof that school psychologists and teachers need to come together around the larger issue of education, burnout and educator well-being. So thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Bye.